Hello everyone. I'm Dasha Jamison with Red Rock Pastel Society of Nevada, and today we have very special guest, Jacob Aguiar, and we're gonna talk everything about pastels competitions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and Jacob is gonna tune in a few. I'm gonna show several of his pastels. He has some exciting news also coming your way, so stay tight. He's gonna be here in a second, and while we're waiting for him to join us, let me tell you about our upcoming shows. So we have two shows this spring. It's a Red Rock Juried Member Web Show, our traditional shows for our members, online exhibition, no shipping. Enter your images online. We will produce beautiful catalog, have wonderful prices, amazing team of jurors and judges. And also we have live exhibition in Las Vegas. So those are two events, and tomorrow we're gonna meet you on Zoom, link in our bio. Thank you everyone for watching us live, and thank you everyone who gonna watch us recorded. So let me send request. Hello. Just a second. Hi Adrian. Yes, we're waiting for Jacob to join us. How are you doing? Please hang tight. And
hello.
How are
Hi.
you today?
Sorry, I'm trying to find a place to sit here. I'm in my basement, which is where my new makeshift studio is, so it's not the greatest setup, but let me see here.
Well, so you will be able to show us around your studio?
I will. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. A lot of
Great.
your followers joining us, and this is Jacob Aguiar, so you obviously know him because you're following him. And I'm Dasha Jamison with Red Rock Pastel Society. So every spring we start doing series of interviews with pastel artists from all over the world, and we promoting our upcoming shows. So this year we doing online and offline show. First time in Las Vegas, we're gonna be live exhibition, so it's very exciting. But today we're going to talk about Jacob, not about our big plans.
Okay. All right, that sounds great.
So this is your studio. Can you show us around?
Sure.
Take
yeah.
us on take us on
just,
a little tour.
I will. Like I said, it's a little bit of a mess. So before my wife and I moved to Massachusetts, I had a really nice studio in an old paper mill, 25, 30 feet high ceilings, beautiful windows. So, but I'm in the basement right now, and you can paint anywhere, but let me turn the camera around and I can just show you my setup right now. Okay.
Okay, that sounds fantastic.
Okay. So, and I'll turn my light on. So here's my easel. So a pretty standard David Sorg easel here, and I use my iPad to paint from. I have a little gooseneck iPad holder there, and then I basically surround myself with pastels. Let me show you really quickly my setup. So to my right, I'm left-handed, so I use my hard pastels less, so I have them sitting on my right. But I pretty much have complete sets of new pastels, created color. So those sit over here. The ones that I use a lot of, so for underpaintings, I'll do monochromatic sometimes. And so I have a lot of these new pastel 305 spruce blues. I probably have about 50 of them sitting there, which is great. I didn't realize New Pastel had stopped selling single sticks. So I have those. And then these Creative colors, this is, I think, Payne's Gray. So it's a particular neutral violet gray that I really like. So I have several of those. And then sometimes I like to do an initial underpainting with this sort of vibrant reddish orange, pale vermilion. So I also have a ton of those. And then I'm kind of ashamed to even show this, but so here's the basement. Here's all the boxes of stuff that I packed up from my studio in Maine. And so it's paintings, it's materials, paper, and then those are more boxes of stuff. And then to my right, or sorry, to my left side, this is, yeah, so this is the pastel box that I use primarily. So organized, as I learned from Richard McKinley, values darkest on the bottom, lightest on the top, and then sort of moving around the color wheel from green, blue, violet, red, orange, yellow, and then back over to green. Neutrals here. What's happened over time over the past couple of years, Dasha, is just with pastels that I choose very frequently, they get shifted to this box. And then I have kind of a secondary box here. And then
of your favorites, right?
Pardon me?
Second box is of your favorites?
Yes, yeah, it's kind of worked out that way. So so that's kind of my secondary box. And then this is a larger, I would say, tertiary box of other pastels that I kind of dip into infrequently. My Rocher don't really get mixed in with the rest. Those are, special.
Very precious, very precious.
Yeah, so
all pastels out there, like, do you know what Rocher's precious pastels?
I feel like we all have to have a couple of them.
Yes.
And then back here is a complete set of Sennelier. So I've had this for probably about 5 years, and I've, the colors that I use a lot, I've gone through the complete sticks, and then I have half sticks of a lot of them. I also have complete sets of Blue Earth pastels, Diane Townsend. I can even come around here, which they're not up to be used quite yet, but I have, all of those there. So, at this point, my studio is really kind of a makeshift studio. It's sort of not the ideal setup, but, it's okay. I can still do exactly what I need to do down here. Over here is a rack that just has recently completed pastels just sitting there. And then over here is where I cut paper. And I can talk about, what I use for materials, what paper I use, how I like to prep the paper. But this is just a large table for cutting paper down. So that's kind of it right now. And right behind me, I actually set up my son with his own table for pastels. He's got an acrylic set up. So he paints behind me a lot when I'm painting.
Oh, that's very cool. How old is he?
He's 4.
He's 4, and you have new addition to the family too, right?
We have a 2-year-old. So we're busy. We're balancing, professional life with family, with me trying to paint as well. So yeah, it definitely keeps us busy.
Well, thank you for showing us your pastel paradise. I see by the comments a lot of people are very jealous of your studio setup, but as we all pastelists know, you cannot have enough. And I think Pierre was watching us, so he is very happy with you having quite a few Senneliers there. So
I love the Sennelier, especially like the mid value into the lights. They tend to be super, super soft and luscious. So like for those finishing touches, they're perfect. Some of the harder ones, some of the darker ones can be a bit harder, but that's okay too, because you tend to use them sort of more thinly anyways in those shadows. So it works out well. Yeah, I would say Sennelier, Sennelier, Ludwig, New Pastel, and probably Great American are what I use most.
Yeah, those are all fine pastels. And something interesting you mentioned, what New Pastels do not sell single sticks anymore. So how would you buy them? Do you buy them by the box? And how would you do it now?
Well, so the ones that I use predominantly, I've had those for 2 or 3 years. So I probably bought 50 or 75 at a time back then before they stopped selling them. So I haven't had to confront that issue yet. I did, I've bought a couple complete sets and that's worked out really well. But yeah, so for the ones that I do for underpaintings, I just happen to have a lot of those left over at this point. And then Cretacolor, some of those colors that I use a lot of, there's comparable colors with Cretacolor. So I'll dip into those as well.
If you wouldn't mind, take picture of your hard sticks because they really go to for the way you work, and a lot of pastel painters work out there, and tell us the numbers. I would like to share it on the stories. I think that would be very useful tools for everyone.
Absolutely. So the numbers of the ones I use most often?
Yeah. Over hard sticks,
Okay.
Because as quote great Richard McKinley, hoard the supplies you like because you never know. So you're a great example of hoarding.
That's true.
So.
There's still pastelists out there that have the original Kitty Wallace paper, and that hasn't been made for, I don't know, more than a decade maybe at this point, and they still have a little stash of it. Yeah.
Yes, well, Adrian, our Miss Facebook, watching us, and she has some, and some of her greatest work done on that paper. So every time she posting, I'm like, Adrian, why do we still have it and we cannot have no more? So let's talk about surfaces, what you use most.
Sure. So I use almost exclusively UART 400 grit. It's a surface over time that I've just become very familiar with, and especially, recently I took some time off of painting, and it was really critical for me to re-enter painting with materials that I was very familiar with. So I will, I'll work with pastel board occasionally. I'll use different grits of UART, but honestly, I would say 99% of what I paint is on UART 400. And what I do, I can grab a piece and show just kind of how I prep it. So
sure.
Sorry.
Here's a comment. Jeff Vintola Fine Art. My guy Jacob, long time bad.
Hey Jeff,
hello.
How you doing, Jeff? Yeah. Jeff's a great guy, great painter. I think. Do you still live in New Hampshire, Jeff? Yeah, we've gone plein air painting a few times. Yeah, very nice guy, great artist. So yeah, the way that I prepare my so UART 400. What I do is I buy dry mount film. It's I think it's called Fusion 400. So it's a film that comes in a roll and it's heat activated. So I buy that in large rolls. I buy UART 400 grit also in their large rolls. And what I do is, because the paper is 56 inches wide, I will cut that down into 32 inch sections and then 24 inch sections, so I have zero waste. And then what I do is I mount that onto acid-free foam core, which is from Jerry's. It's 3/16 inch acid-free foam core. And then I take those 24 by 24s and 24 by 32s, and then I cut them down to the size that I need for any particular painting. So yeah, and UART paper is very consistent. It's very predictable. One roll to the next, it's very, very similar. You're not going to confront a lot of issues with quality control in my experience. I've had one roll maybe over the last 8 years that had an issue, and I let them know and they immediately replaced it. So they're great. I'm a big fan of the UART paper.
Yes, it's a great surface, and it definitely can take a lot of beating.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yep.
So the cover is a surface. It's abrasive for those of you who may be new to pastel painting. So very smooth surfaces to work in, and there is abrasive. Like UART is a great example of abrasive paper. Viva texture, so it has some tooth. And if you take a big stick of some soft pastel, it will probably eat it alive. So that's why you're starting. So that's why you're starting with harder pastels on this surface. Yep. So can you walk us? Go ahead. Walk us through your process.
Yeah, and I was just going to say too, that's another reason why underpaintings are great. I mean, they're they obviously they provide a lot for the finished piece, but it also saves pastel. I mean, you can, when you're blocking in the underpainting, you can really paint it thinly, and then when you wet it with alcohol, it kind of yeah, it dissolves that pastel, and you can really, you know, smear it, move it around. So you do save a lot of pastel by doing that as well, by having an underpainting versus just painting directly on the paper. If you're trying to, you know, cover up all of that light surface, you'll end up going through a ton of pastel. It's hard to do. I've tried to do a few where I just painted directly on it, and it eats up the pastel, definitely.
Yeah, so you mentioned alcohol. So you would use alcohol wash over hard pastel, right?
Or over soft pastel. So I use just standard, like 70% isopropyl alcohol. You can see this is from Walgreens. You can find it at any pharmacy. It was actually hard to find at the start of the pandemic. I think people were hoarding alcohol as well as toilet paper. So it was hard to find at that point. But yeah, it works great. I've tried using, I think there's 70 and then 91%. And I find the 91% just dries way too fast for me. And probably, are you in Nevada? Is that where you live?
Yes, I'm based in Las Vegas, Nevada. Right now,
Okay.
I'm on the East Coast. So,
okay. The only reason I ask is because I'm sure that 71% in an arid environment like Nevada would dry almost instantly. And so I find the 70, yeah, the 70 gives you time to kind of move it around, to edit and adjust your underpainting.
Well, I haven't used alcohol outside, and thankful to me being an artist and hoarding some supplies, I have happy towels, actually Viva kind, during 2020, and some alcohol because I was hoarding some. You wouldn't find it in Walgreens, but I had to break into my artist stash for cleaning. So that was...
Yes. So I can show you. I can show you sort of what an underpainting would look like. So after like the first steps of painting.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Guys, put hearts in the chat if you want to see Jacob do it. So that would be super exciting.
Yeah, so let me do that. I'll flip my camera around again. So I do a number, like I said, a number of different underpainting techniques. This one here is, I would say, the most, I don't know, most basic maybe, but what I do is not any particular type of pastels, but I will draw in initially, usually with like a lighter pink color, and I will block it in, really trying to get the values, trying to get the composition correct from the beginning. And then I use a brush. So I cover most of the surface. I leave some space on the edges because I know I can melt the pastel with alcohol and kind of move it around, and I can start to soften edges. But I will then take a large brush. So this is, where's the camera? So this is just a large flat, probably a little over an inch wide, maybe an inch and a quarter wide. And so I'll use that with this is just a top from a baby bottle. We have a lot of these, so it works really well. It's small, it won't break. So I'll use that to hold the alcohol. I'll put about an inch or two in there, and then I basically, take the brush, dab it in the alcohol, and then dab it on a paper towel to get rid of the excess. And then, my process, it's hard to show, but I hold it, call it the Palmer method. So hold it like this. And then, a variety of strokes. So sometimes it's more of a directional stroke. In the grasses or here, there's, these weeds in the foreground. I'll kind of, just to give it some of that texture of growing up out of the ground, or that kind of motion. But yeah, and that's, that right there would be a pretty typical underpainting. If I'm using local color, it'll look kind of like that. And then the next step is really just coming back over it with probably starting with pastels. Yeah.
Guys, just 1 second, like that. We turn off comments so you can see Jacob, and I have doorbell ringing because we live. So Jacob, please carry on just a second, okay?
Okay. Okay, no problem. But as I was saying, this is a pretty typical underpainting for me. The pastel surface now is completely set in. You can see a tiny bit of pastel dust there, but it's stable now. So I can now go back in. I've gotten a lot of the tooth back. So when you wet it, it sort of sets the pastel into those you know, into the grooves, into the sort of crevices of the paper. And now I can go back in and paint directly over it pretty freely. So yeah, so this is one of my underpainting techniques. Others will be, you know, using a monochromatic, like I said earlier. So for instance, this pastel here, which is from New Pastel. It is, oh, focus for me. So it's 305P spruce blue. And I learned about this pastel from Terry Ford. It's a beautiful color, and I will use it often in darks and a finish painting, but I find it's really nice for an underpainting because you can get the entire value spectrum with using that single pastel.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing this underpainting technique. I turned comments of so you guys can see Jacob's screen, and I have a question about mounting paper.
Sure.
What kind of adhesive do you use to mount your paper?
Sorry, what kind of what? What kind of what?
Adhesive.
Adhesive. So I use, I think it's, gosh, I haven't bought it in a while. I believe it's called Fusion 4000. I believe it's a dry mounting film. So it's a film that it's basically almost like a plastic wrap, and you put it between the paper and the foam core. And when it's heated, I use about 185 degrees in my dry mount press. It basically melts that, and it archivally adheres the paper to the foam core beneath it.
Thank you so much. I hope it makes sense. And so how did you start painting with a pastel?
So I think, I first started back in I believe it was 2012. I was in a graduate degree program, so getting a doctorate in naturopathic medicine, which is integrative medicine. I was in Seattle, and I had finished 2 years of the program and was feeling really burned out, felt like I couldn't sort of finish the last 2 years of it. And so what I did is I took a year off from school and said, if, you know, kind of asked myself if I could do anything, what would I do in that free year? And it was basically to create art, you know, to whatever that looked like. At that point, I didn't know what it would be. At first, I thought it was going to be watercolors. So bought, you know, all the best watercolor materials, really nice Arches paper, really nice watercolors. Didn't last long with that. I got fairly frustrated just with the process. I felt like I had to be so intentional with it. It didn't feel super free for me to just paint in watercolors. And also I was a total beginner, so I'm sure that's part of the reason it was very difficult. But then, you know, watching videos online, I would just type in, you know, watercolor artists, or I would go onto Artist Network TV. And so Artist Network had a ton of instructional videos, and I think they may still have them. I haven't watched them in a number of years. And I just saw Richard McKinley's work there, and I saw how he combined watercolor with pastel on top, and that was sort of like a gateway drug into just using pastels. It was like that segue from using watercolors over to pastels. And then once I started using pastels, it was much more intuitive for me, coming more from just like a drawing background. I didn't have any formal art education, but as a kid drawing in high school, I took a number of high school art classes. Didn't do any art in college at all. There was a big sort of at least 4 or 5 year, no, probably 6 year gap. I didn't do any art in college, didn't do any art in the first 2 years of naturopathic school. But yeah, so pastels just kind of made sense, just given my history with drawing.
Thank you so much. Great story. So you combining both careers at this time. Please, can you give an advice for those who are trying to juggle daytime job and artist career? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, it's not easy. You know, the advice I would give is just be very intentional about how you spend your time. So I specifically block off painting time. So I know that in a given week, Mondays from 1:30 to 5, I can paint. Fridays, every other Friday from about 7 to 12, I can paint. And then on the weekends, when my kids nap, I can paint. So like those are the times that I know that I have available to me. and I make the most of them. Even before those times, like in the evening time, I'll get out my iPad, I'll sort of prep a composition, I'll prep a photo, so that when I have those periods of time, I can kind of hit the ground running. So I think it's really about, if art is a priority, making sure that you view it as a priority and that you really give yourself the time to do the artwork. Otherwise, time can slip away. When we moved to Massachusetts and we had our daughter, who's now 2 years old, I didn't paint for about a year and a half, and it seemed like that time, just sort of flew by. And then, essentially one week, and I just sort of said to myself, you need to start painting again. Like, you absolutely have to. And painting for me, beyond just the creative outlet, it keeps me balanced. It keeps me stable. It allows me to sort of balance the stress of the work I do, and sort of keeps me in a same place. And I feel like I'm a better person when I paint, sort of more patient, more relaxed. I sleep better. Life is just better all around if I paint. So I make sure that it's a priority in my life now.
Thank you, Jacob. And I just see my workout coach Taylor joining us, and it's the same advice she would give: make it priority, block in time, and be intentional. So
that's right. Yeah.
Here is Bethany saying she paints when her kids sleep too. Thank you for your comment, and thanks everyone for watching us live here. I'm Dasha Jameson with Red Rock Pastel Society. We're promoting our upcoming exhibitions, and Jacob, so Taylor says yes, she concurs. Thank you all, guys, and we're gonna save this video, so if you like it and comment, maybe you will have more videos from us. So thank you so much. Jacob, I have more questions. So you mentioned your iPad setup. So you work from photograph. How do you take photographs? Do you go plein air sometimes?
I do. Yeah. So I can again flip my phone around and show just my iPad setup. I do go plein air painting, but it is more difficult just with my time limitations. To spend maybe a half hour trying to find a spot to paint, getting set up. If I only have 5 hours total, I can spend a good 2 hours just getting to a location, setting up, getting ready. Oh, that's my son. So let me gonna log in here. So I take thousands upon thousands of reference photos, and I see the iPad as a really important compositional tool. So many of my photos, when I take them, they're not necessarily painting ready, but then I'll bring them into my iPad. Let me just find a particular scene. These are all from Jackson, Wyoming, and the Grand Tetons. Let's see here. Oh gosh. I'm just looking for a scene. I don't know. For instance, I'll take this scene, which, I would never paint that scene as is. I don't think it really works compositionally. So I can, go in, edit the scene. I could, anytime you're taking a photo in direct sunlight, it'll get, usually the values will be very contrasty. The shadows will get really dark and the lights will become really light. So on the iPad, there's this sort of editing tool over here. You can edit the light. And what's interesting is when you adjust this, it not only either lightens or darkens it, but it actually modulates the color saturation. It actually affects the highlights. It'll usually tone down the highlights. It'll narrow the value range a little bit. So that's something I do quite often. So for this scene, like I said, it's very contrasty. I could come in, I can adjust that, and then use this little, it's a cropping tool, but it's also useful for adjusting composition. So I could come in, adjust my composition. Maybe I want to get rid of most of what's over there on the right side of this, or on the left side of the scene. And so I'll usually just take my iPad and I'll play with photos, potentially, for a good hour and a half, when I have some free time, say at night, and I'll play around and find a composition that I find pleasing, just thinking about the sort of standard compositional rules. So yeah, so I use my iPad as a really, really critical tool for my painting. Yeah, and they have a, you can also specifically address the color saturation. And then, when you're done, you just sort of save it. And then I favorite the photos that I intend to eventually paint. So this little heart up here, so it goes into a different folder. And then all of these are basically potential painting material. So yeah, that's kind of how I use my iPad. I did a lot more plein air painting before kids because I could just, what I love to do is I would finish work at like 4:30 or 5, and I would drive directly to a local marsh that we had where we used to live, and I would paint for a couple hours. But at this point, I don't have that freedom. I don't have that flexibility. And I'll also keep sort of finished paintings in this folder as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I use my iPad.
That's great insight and very useful tool for all you guys. So
Very useful.
Yeah, instead of scrolling Instagram, we can try that.
Yeah, this is a great thing to do at nighttime. And and sometimes I'll find a composition like this that I actually love. It's a simple composition. I love working in squares. I love the asymmetry of it. I love the patterns of darks and lights, but I may not paint it immediately, but I know that I can always come back to it. And I often find that if I find a scene I really want to paint, if I'm patient about painting it, meaning I don't jump right into it, I actually find I'm a bit more successful. It's almost like it kind of marinates in the subconscious. My brain's somehow kind of working on it without me consciously thinking about the scene. So one of those would be like this scene here, which I think is just an absolutely spectacular scene. And I want to paint it, but I'm just being patient with it. I sometimes come back to it. I look at it. I think about kind of problem solving certain areas of it. And then now I know I kind of have it when I'm ready to paint that particular scene.
This is fantastic scene. And
yeah, it's gorgeous.
We're hoping to see the finished painting soon or some progress shots. So.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure I'll post it on Instagram first. That's my typical place where I post my work. Sometimes on Facebook, but yeah, mostly on Instagram.
Thank you. May I ask you about entering competitions?
Sure.
I went on your website and you won so many awards in the recent years. How do you go about entering competition? What work to enter? How to go about process?
That's a big question. There's a lot that goes into, I think, the thought process about entering shows. I would say earlier on, when I just, I wanted to, I hate to say compare myself, but I just wanted to see how my work sort of stood up to some of the artists around. So I would enter almost any show that I could. I would basically go to the Pastel journal, go to the back of it where it would list shows, and I would just put a star next to all the shows I wanted to enter. I created an Excel spreadsheet with all of the entry deadlines, the delivery deadlines, and then I would never paint for a particular show. I never wanted to put so much thought and effort into, well, who's on the jury, who's the judge, who's giving awards. I feel like if you just focus on painting your best paintings, and then at that point, once you have your pieces, decide where to submit those works. And I would always, though, I would submit what I considered my better works to the most competitive shows. So like the PSA, Pastel Society of America, the IAP show. My goal over the next couple of years is to submit more to sort of cross media shows. So like American Impressionist Society, American Tonalist Society. Yeah, submitting more to those types of shows. And who knows, maybe at some point, some of the really big shows, if I really work hard, some of the Western shows, which always, are just incredible. I haven't submitted to shows probably in the past 3-ish years. I think the last one that I really actively submitted to was the Plein Air Salon through Plein Air magazine, and that's also includes every genre. And at the end of the year, they award awards to artists of any media. So, but no, I think it's a great part of the learning process, to be a part of it. And it allows you to feel part of the community too, to know that, okay, we're all kind of painting on our own, but then you can go to those shows and meet up with artists that that you've met through other shows or through other venues. So I'm a big fan of pastel shows. And, I think it's really good for people to start local. So, start with your local sort of more regional shows, membership shows. So like if, for instance, like the Pastel Society of New Hampshire, which is one of my local societies here, like they have membership shows. And so artists who are just starting out can submit and participate in those shows. And then when they feel that they're ready, they can start submitting to the bigger annual international shows. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your experience, and looking forward to seeing more of your works. And maybe you will select Red Rock Pastel Society as one of your next show to enter. So just a reminder, we have 2 shows coming up, one of them online membership show. So you do need to join, but you're guaranteed to have 1 piece in, and it's online
Great.
show, great awards, great team of judges and jurors.
Great.
So Isabel Lim is gonna do judging. There is an international team of jurors, 3 jurors, and it becomes small, like a local society, but we all went online and we suddenly realized like, you can enter any show because we all inside together. So,
sure.
This is the first year we feel like we're able to pull offline show. So we're doing one local show also in Las Vegas, and it's a themed show. So we decided to give it a theme, and we called Red Rock Pastel Society. So why not to go around the rainbow and start with a red? So that's a theme show. We don't know what turnout will be, but we always have great team of international jurors and a judge from Finland. So we're gonna see what it's gonna look like. So.
Great. Yeah, online shows are fantastic. There's so little sort of resources that go into entering those shows. You don't have to mail your paintings. You just pay the entry fee, and you can win awards. You can be, your work can be shown, can be displayed. So yeah, I think those are probably the kind of have the lowest barrier to entry, is just the online shows. And it's great that there's so many of them at this point.
Yeah, you can
definitely Red Rock Pastel Society. That's the one.
It's the best one. Okay, of course, because we are talking. And I was scrolling to comments, and thank you guys for all your hearts, all your comments, very engaging today. And I realized how people missed you, Jacob, and for the past 2 years.
Well, that makes me feel great. I can't see any of the comments, Dasha. I don't know if I should be able to.
I don't know how does it work. I guess I
That's
see
okay.
them. So because I'm a host, so
okay.
No,
that's okay. I don't need to see them, but no, I'm excited to be, an active part of the pastel community again. It was hard, for that 1.5 years off. I felt like, everybody went through a lot with COVID and sort of just how it impacted our lives. And, in my personal life, we just had so much going on that, painting kind of fell off my radar. But in the past 3 to 4 months, I've been super active with it again. I'm sort of picked right back up where I left off, 1.5 years ago. And I'm really, really excited to be active again.
This sounds fantastic. And you have some exciting news, right? So Patreon?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a Patreon page, which is it's a great, website that allows artists to come and learn with me. And I'm relaunching the page on April 1st. So for anybody who's interested in learning with me on a very consistent basis versus just say like a weekend workshop, it's a way to maintain an ongoing sort of long-term artist relationship. And I think right now I have about 200 patrons. There's 3 different tiers. So the lowest tier is called the Rembrandt Tier. And that includes a full-length demo every other week. And folks who have either watched my demos in person or through Patreon know that I try to give everything that I can in those demos. I really like to share everything that I can about my process, about what I'm thinking as I'm painting. And those demos probably last around, I would say, between an hour to 2 hours. And I like to include the entire thing. I don't edit pieces out because I think it's good for people to see when things work out, when there are struggles, when I have to do problem solving, when I have to think through what the next steps are. So I try to include everything in those demos. And then there's a second tier, which is the Sennelier tier, which has weekly demos, and then also has weekly art tips, weekly challenges, monthly business tips, and then a private Facebook page. And so artists will join the Facebook page, and then it's just a nice community to be a part of. I like to jump in at least a couple times a week, comment on people's artwork, be a part of that community. And then the highest tier is the Ludwig tier, and that includes everything that's found in this Sennelier tier, but also a monthly critique. So artists can send me 3 to 5 pieces, and then once a month, I'll just give a very thorough critique, not only about what I'm seeing in an individual piece, but I try to pull themes from what I'm seeing in the paintings. Like if somebody needs to work on, I don't know, certain aspects of composition, like I'll try to pull from the pieces that I'm seeing and find like overarching themes for artists to work on by the next time they submit the next month. So those are the 3 tiers. The Terry Ludwig tier has filled up. So the critique tier is full. The other 2 tiers are unlimited. So yeah, I'd love to have people join. It's a highlight for me. I love being a part of it. I love seeing the art that people are producing. I love seeing sort of the growth and the process that people go through. You know, it's really fulfilling to see some of the breakthroughs that happen as part of that. So feel free to join me. Just go to Patreon. You can type in Jacob Aguiar. I think probably just Jacob Aguiar Pastel, and then my page will pop up, and then you can join there and be a patron.
That sounds like fantastic opportunity, and I had chatted with some Red Rock members who taken your Patreon classes and attending your group, so they all loved it, and I had a lot of responses about how many pastels you have. So everybody impressed when you're showing your studio. So do more of that. I guess people...
Okay. I'll do more. Yeah, I'll do more like short videos about materials and supplies and pastels. Yeah, I'll do a little bit more of like the behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, it seems like people really enjoy that.
Yes, it's kind of like you're seeing the kitchen, not just sitting down in a restaurant for the dish.
Yep. Yeah, see behind the scenes. Yeah.
And what you have going on in Wyoming this summer?
Oh, so there's a gallery that I'm part of in Jackson Hole called Turner Fine Art. It's a gallery owned by Catherine Turner, who's a fantastic oil and watercolor painter. And they have a group show this summer coming up. I don't know the exact dates. I think it's June or July, but that's what I'm focusing on right now in my studio is preparing paintings for that show. And so the scene that's over my shoulder is a scene from Jackson, so Jackson Hole. So that's kind of in preparation for that show. So it's a big one. I did a 2-person show at her gallery September of 2019, so before COVID hit, and it was incredible. I mean, Jackson is such an amazing art city, art town. Have you been to Jackson?
No, I haven't, but I heard a lot.
You should sometime. Yeah, and I think it's great that, you know, a gallery in a you know, a big art town like that is welcoming pastels into the fold, you know, because there's oftentimes it's all oils, maybe some watercolor, maybe a little bit of acrylic, and then sculpture. And so I think it's incredible when these galleries are really inclusive and they like to include other media in their shows. Yes,
it's very important for the medium and for educating not just artists but general public about the brilliance of medium of pastel, how versatile it is, how archival it is, how beautiful it is, and what it's almost everlasting if it's framed correctly. So
absolutely,
that's a great deal, and very thankful to all those galleries who promote pastel artists like us. So that's wonderful. And
absolutely.
we're looking forward to our in-person show to show like variety of pastel artists in person in a gallery with a great light. And pastel is beautiful for the screen. I mean, it's fantastic, but when you see in person, it's totally different feel and different like three-dimensional experience because of the nature of the pigment and the way.
Absolutely.
Like, no, you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
You guys also know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So some great news. Thank you for showing us around your studio. Please check out Patreon and Wyoming. Jacob has wonderful website, so you can find all the upcoming information on it, right? So you can, if you're looking for Patreon or show in Wyoming, put it on your calendar. Of course, put on calendar your Red Rock shows and like and comment. I'm going to save it here if you don't mind. I will share it also on YouTube because a lot of our followers and artists prefer YouTube for watching videos. Yeah, so I'm going to share it across platforms. And tomorrow, for everybody who are still with us, we have a Zoom demo by Lana Ballett. She's going to do wave painting. So you guys, it's open demo. So you guys all invited.
Great.
First 100 people get in. Members will get in first, obviously, for Red Rock, but it's open demo. We're going to show it later. Some surprises and door prizes coming along.
Great.
Yeah, we're trying at Red Rock to promote medium of pastels and the artists who work in this medium. Thank you for doing this interview. Totally worth 2 years. Greetings to your beautiful family, and thank you for inviting us to your studio.
Absolutely,
thank you guys for.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very fun. Yeah, take care, and I'll see you around virtually and maybe in person soon. Okay.
Yes, hope to see you soon. Thank you all, guys. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.